The new 4020 magazine is out now. And if you are watching the video, you'll be able to find a QR code on screen to scan. Phil doesn't know what one of those is. It's like a barcode, but you wave your phone in front of it and it works. Welcome to the 4020 podcast.
Is that your landline?
Yeah, if you wave it in front, and you might get hold of like 0898 numbers. There's a reference for the teenagers, as they say. How are you, Phil?
All right. Yeah. An interesting weekend of rugby league. I'm yet to find a really good game, which we can come to later as to why that might be. I suspect it's because we can now see every game, and it's probably no different to any other season. But we started off with, big crowds, very intense matches, Las Vegas, Wigan winning the World Club Challenge, and we all got, I think, imbued with the standard that we were going to see this year, and we're at exact halfway point. And there were 6 games all on TV, which we've never had before, and I'm struggling to find a quality game in all of them, and that's not in any way to decry from Holland in their winning run or Salford playing really well against Warrington. But overall, I thought the standard of the 6 Super League games were not what we have been seeing up till now. And there's obvious reasons for that. We played too many games, there's injuries kicking in. So I understand that, but not a great weekend for domestic rugby league in the Super League, I would say.
I'm still recovering from Wembley, which is ridiculous because I'm not a player, but I think it's the stairs more than anything. James, you were at Wembley. We didn't speak to you last week. How was your Saturday in the posh air seats?
Yeah, it was good, thanks. It was a sunny day, wasn't it? But my dad was. They were just sat behind the Warrington dugout. They have no affiliation to Warrington, by the way, but they were sitting in the sun. So for us, we were all right. We were shaded in the Royal Box. It was good. It was. I think what's wonderful about the Challenge Cup is it still has that. It still has that rugby league family feel to it in some ways. In that you see lots of people that you know and you can catch up with. And I think really for me that was the highlight. Because the game, I mean, I didn't see the women's game, unfortunately. I was a little bit late getting there. Would have tested my marriage, which is the 2nd anniversary tomorrow, which we wouldn't have reached.
Oh, congratulations to you.
Sorry, I had inflicted Wakefield and Sheffield on Stephen. So we watched the men's game, terribly dull. And so for me, the highlight was actually just chatting to people, really, and catching it with people.
That is the point of Wembley. Although it's also in the press, but you're going, "Who's that? Who's them? Who's here? Who are they? Who are these people? I've never seen them before." I mean, people can say that about me these days. I'm hardly anywhere, but
sometimes it's hard to recognise people out of place, isn't it? You know, when a player's in the Royal Box, but they don't have the shirt and the squad number and the name on the back, it does make it a little bit more challenging. And I'm not walking around in a Ron Seal shirt.
I can't recognise people with shirts and with names and numbers on anymore. I don't know what's going on. Is there any more fallout from Wembley? Is it all done, Phil? We're done for another year. I know we spoke about it in depth last week. But I think are we now in that Wembley hangover period? Is that what we've got to call it? Because Warrington obviously lost and Wigan battled against Castleford, and Wakefield nearly lost and Sheffield won. Now that doesn't make sense, does it? But is that the headline for this week on the field at least?
I think the great thing is that we've got the date and the tickets on sale for next year. And normally we don't have that until a little bit later. So there is now no excuse for people not to know when it is and to decide that if it is the kind of occasion for meeting people that James had just spoken about, that if you want to be part of that, then you can plan ahead. And the other big news, I suppose, this week is that we've finally announced the Samoa Test Series, which you may have heard on here some time ago, that was going to be 2 matches at Wigan and Leeds. It'd be very interesting to see what the crowds are, because whilst we've known that it was there were some machinations behind the scenes as to who was going to pay for the tour, it's very, very late. So for Wembley to be on sale a year before, I know that there's a real pull on supporters' pockets at the moment, and the debate's raised its head again about going to France, and does that detract from going to Magic Weekend? But Wembley should be that. I think we said, didn't we, last week, that the actual occasion was better than the games that we saw, but we wouldn't have missed for the world being part of that occasion. That's what we've got to get back to. That's what we've got to sell. And so, no, I think there will be fallout on the field that it does take its toll. Clearly, the debate about a week off is going to be one that is ongoing as to whether it's a benefit or not. But the teams that play every week, and Mark Aston mentioned it when he was talking about Sheffield, I think have played, is it 19 consecutive games with a part-time squad. We do need to look at all of that, but it's still one of the big events in the sporting calendar. We know when it is next year. Get your tickets.
England, Samoa. We're not going to London, which some people are upset about, but I don't know if they're the same people who complain that the Challenge Cup final's at Wembley and London's expensive. So I don't know there, but it's no surprise, as you say. How long ago did you mention it on the podcast? 2 tests, Wigan and Leeds. It was all a matter of waiting for I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed. And a phrase you love, Phil. It is what it is. And I'm sure if we make it a big event in the autumn by supporting it, it will be a big event in the autumn.
I don't think we had any option to place it where the test matches have been, because I think at this late stage, the added cost of going to a Wimbledon or a Charlton or wherever you might want to go. Again, if you don't have sufficient notice to plan, put it in the backyard of the people who are most likely to go and make sure that we do the very best we can to sell that out. If Samoa bring a first choice team, then we can play this. It's the revenge for the semi-final of the last World Cup that was over here. And they've got some fantastic players. We're watching the NRL of the week and marveling at some of the players that we've seen, and some of the Samoans like very high standard. So yeah, I think it's going to be 2 great games. I'm not 100% sure how you can sell a series if it's only 2 and it finishes 1-1. But because there was no time for it to be put in front of the public, you have to play it where it's easiest for them to get to. And clearly, Wigan is available. Leeds is always available post-season. I think the Leeds game for the Tonga series was probably the atmosphere was the best. The crowd was the best. It rained heavily. It always does. But we got the opportunity to again get behind international football, and at this stage, that's all we can do. I think it'll be on the BBC. I would imagine that we'll get close to 16,000 at each venue. It'll be a worthy occasion, and the more we can get test matches, back in the public domain, the better. I think we'll see an announcement on Asia Pacific Championship next week, maybe. I think the 2 more women's teams will qualify for the World Cup in 2026 at the weekend in the European qualification, and you'd hope that the final announcement about the venue of the 2026 World Cup is also not too far down the line. So it's slow, but we need to promote international football as much as we can, and they were the only real venues we could take them at such short notice.
Yeah, any Samoans listening, don't book tickets for the Western Terrace at Leeds. There's the advice. If you're coming over in the autumn, that is the official advice from this program, not the travel agency. We're a third of an estate agency. We used to have loads of Great Britain caps, but now we don't have those anymore. What do you make of it all, James? I know it's late in the day to announce things, but at least it's announced and it's on.
Yeah, it's just a shame. I was just Googling whilst you were talking, because I couldn't remember what this supposed international program was over the next few years, but clearly it was set out, wasn't it, last year? And this seemed to be falling at the first hurdle, really. But at least they've got some games over the line, which ultimately is better than what I certainly first feared, where there may not have been any touring side, and then it may have been 1 game. But we've got 2. I think Phil's right that it's hard to sell a narrative that it's that you can win a series at least 2-1 when it could end up a draw at 1-1. But nevertheless, clearly they were stiff opposition in the World Cup. So in terms of what England need to develop that side for the next World Cup, then they need to be playing teams like Samoa. I'd like to think that they'll put up a stiffer test than perhaps Tonga did last year. I think that series felt a little bit flat. And in terms of the World Cup, I forgot, but it's supposedly in Australia, isn't it? I don't know if that's been announced, but in 2026, and I think we're all waiting eagerly the announcement of that, because when you see that the Euros are on TV now, it was on in the office today. I wondered why people were sort of jeering at one point, and I looked, it was on the big screen in the office. So it's international tournaments that will literally turn heads in offices. Be that football clearly as the biggest sport in the world, or rugby league, and so getting the international calendar right is crucial for the game and the development of the game. So it looks like they're getting things in order down under with the South Pacific nations, but it'd be great to have whatever's happening in 2025, which is supposedly the Ashes. Has that been confirmed yet? I mean, we're probably speaking way too soon on that, but that's the kind of thing that when this Samoa tournament does take place, that they should then be announcing during that tournament. Next year, by the way, Australia are visiting for the first time in God knows how long for a test series. These are the venues, these are the dates. Get your tickets early. That's what we should be doing. Whether that happens is anybody's guess.
2020 was that was only it's supposed to be. Because the World Cup was in 2021 and the Ashes was in 2020, and obviously things changed. But
I think we're due there in 2025, but you're absolutely right that in the program for the Samoa series, it should be, if you want to book a travel package, then they're going to be on sale, straight after Christmas or whatever it might be. And you do need to plan these things. And there is a history of England, Great Britain fans getting on planes and going to an Ashes series. And whilst we hope there is a competitive England team, and I think some of our players currently performing in the NRL would have you believe that it would be a competitive team, then the Aussies will buy into it as well, because they love it. And we wouldn't want to speak ill of those who are finding it difficult at the moment. But clearly, rugby union internationally is absolutely struggling in that part of the world at the moment. New Zealand Warriors are the hottest ticket in town, even ahead of the All Blacks at the moment. If you're looking at attendances and television figures, the Australian Rugby Union are struggling. One of their star players has just signed for Gold Coast Titans. The Melbourne Rebels, I believe, have now been disbanded as a provincial rugby union team. So we do need to go. We do need to announce it quickly. We do need to play on the back of the Pacific Championship. I think Vegas is very close to being announced for next year as well, which is going to see 4 different NRL sides and a women's game. And it's very close to being nailed on Wigan and Warrington in a Super League clash as well. All of that feeds into the international game. And I think if we do get it right, then that is where we'll make some significant gains. And timing is everything. So, yeah, when we play Samoa, let's have all the other pieces of the jigsaw ready and in hand, and let people know how they can be involved.
On a completely non-important thing, can we make sure that the Player of the Series award is named before the tour happens and not in the week before, so we know who it's named after, and we can talk about that. I don't know who it's going to be because I don't know anything, do I? But yeah, it would be nice rather than the day before. And of course, if it finishes 1-1, you can decide it on aggregate, which would have been perfect in the World Cup. We could have gone through, but never mind. Can't change the rule.
What's our equivalent of penalties?
Well, they have. I've seen shootouts in rugby union before, so you can do that. Just get but it's not goal kickers. It's only forwards can do it. So if you've got lead crooks in your team, you're all right. But if you've not got lead crooks, do we have any goal kicking forwards anymore? Is that something that's gone along with proper loose forwards?
Reece Martin.
Is he off to Lee or anywhere else, Phil? Just throw.
Well, he'll be fielding offers.
That'd be a swap for a coach from Salford, maybe. That's tongue in cheek. Let's put myself back on mute.
You could have a newspaper column with opinions like that.
People are saying what they think. People are saying out there, Phil. It's not me speaking.
Don't be stealing my role on this thing, James. It's no good. It's terrible. 1 week you're off the podcast, and then we get a review saying we're dull and dreary. I mean, what's that all about?
That was me. I submitted that one.
Sabotage. Is there any other news we need to talk about? Because I feel it's been a very quiet week, and unless I have slept through, which there is a chance I have slept through everything.
It's not really news as such, but I did see. I'm trying to find a tweet. The Sam Tompkins film that was done.
Oh yes, Steve
That's
Mascott.
yeah, that's now going around the cinemas, isn't it? In the north, in the real cinemas. I don't know if you've seen that information. Let me find it later in the podcast. We'll give that a plug later.
Well, seeing as it's we've got a real cinema in Wakefield, so I can go to that.
Yeah, it's at Wakefield. Yeah,
I didn't know.
I can't remember what the program's called. Sam Tompkins. Let me Google it whilst we're talking.
The Last Chance or something, isn't it, Phil? I mean, Joe was on the program. We should remember. I should remember, but
Yeah, and he said it was going on. So, but I think the main news coming out of that one in London was that a network has taken it, which when he came on, he hoped that that would be the case. And I think the other thing was he gave us the exclusive that he was following Wigan this year, but apparently that's now an exclusive. So, but I saw it briefly on the way into Wembley with you, and he was saying that had some great footage and that he hoped that if they won, I think he has this great idea of miking up people who are just on the fringes of things like parents and he'd already arranged that for Wembley. So that there's going to be some great behind the scenes footage.
did you see the clip of Mark Chapman on the Sports Agents podcast, which is it Global Do It? I think I can't remember. And he was extolling the virtues of how great Matt Peet is to people who've never heard of him. So it might cut through. It might cut through. I don't know. James, have you got the information?
Well, I know it's on the Thursday, the 8th of August in Wakefield. So that's the answer that you really wanted.
In the calendar.
So, yeah, but there are other ones. I know Widnes was one. Where basically wherever there's a real cinema across the M62 corridor, because we're not on M62 corridor sport, that's where they will be playing. Just going back to the quality of Super League, I had an interesting conversation with somebody in the Royal Box about the general standard of Super League, and he concurred with me that there are too many games that are of an average quality, which I think Phil, suggested from this weekend. Now, bear in mind that I'm typically only seeing one a week at the moment, but I've not seen many games that have lit up. But I think I was trying to find the tweet earlier on that I saw the other day about Castleford playing Wigan. Is this now the third time that they've played?
Oh, it's our friend Louis who's coming on the podcast mentioned that. Yeah, they've played a ridiculous number of times in Super League as well as the Challenge Cup, of course.
Yeah, they played in the Challenge Cup. They played twice in the Super League already, and they've already played, I think, at Castleford twice and then once at Wigan. And this is what's completely wrong with our sport here in the UK. Like we need to get rid of these loop fixtures. The sooner we do that, the better, because you reduce the number of fixtures, you increase the intensity of the game. You make it a scarcer product that people actually want to go and watch, and it's obviously on every game's on TV now, so it's there available for everybody to watch. People actually don't want to watch 27 rounds of a competition. Let's get it to what it should be, which is 22, 23 game if you include Magic Weekend, but that's supposedly being knocked on the head. But in short, there's too many games for me, and I think what you saw in the Warrington game, which is the game I'd reviewed and watched, was that Warrington were just really flat after the Challenge Cup. And if you wanted to play a team the week after the Challenge Cup, then Castleford and Salford had that opportunity, didn't they? And I didn't watch the Castleford game, but clearly Wigan cannot have been at their best. Castleford obviously played pretty well, I'm guessing, and nearly beat Wigan. And I think that's what shows when you put so much into a one-off game, a final. Clearly, it is difficult, win or loss, to come off the back of that. And you'd have expected that teams with a rest should be capable of performing at a greater level of intensity. So maybe I'm defeating my own argument. If we didn't see the level of quality that we would have expected this week in games that didn't involve teams in the Challenge Cup, then is that not a reverse argument against my loop fixtures? Over to you, Phil.
I think and we've discussed this a lot. You're absolutely right. If we're talking about people going to Wembley, we're talking about the profile of the international game, then again, to have loop fixtures to make the season so long, it's incredibly hard on the players, and that affects the quality of the game. It's as hard on the fans in terms of allocating their budget and looking at the fixture list and going, I don't really need to go and see that game because I've already seen it this year. Or why are we playing? I went to Hull on Saturday, which probably won't surprise you and isn't newsworthy, but Hull played Leeds 4 weeks ago at that very stadium. Hull then go on the road because the grass is being tended to at the MKM Stadium. Hull come back to celebrate our first home game in 5 weeks, and it's the game that they last saw when they went. It's a really hard sell, irrespective of results.
I don't think that is a hard sell, Phil, because it's a guaranteed 2 points to Hull, isn't it?
It is at the moment, but
sorry,
hard sell to the travelling fans. I absolutely think you're right, but we have got too many fixtures that we've already seen, and that detracts not only from the quality of the games because there are too many of them, but it puts too much pressure on fans. If you're wanting them to pay to go to Wembley, if you want them to book seats at the internationals, and they have to go because they are not viable for on or off the field. And if people say, "Oh yeah, but it's the clubs need it," and what you're going to replace that income with, scarcity will mean that we'll fill stadia with games that you only see once, and not scrabbling around for fans because it's the third time that you've seen the same fixture.
I want to know who. Obviously you don't want to name them, James, but was it Marcin Afire? Did you ask Marcin Afire in his fantastically pink suits about the or Fred or Sir Lindsay Hoyle, or was it one of the?
I can't reveal my sources, but it is somebody that the game holds in. That's a surprise either, is it? I don't think that's a shock statement that somebody would make. I think it's absolutely right. I think there is a lack of intensity generally across the competition. People know that, and that's ultimately why the NFL is so successful, and why players, when they go down there, are successful. Well, they bring that level of intensity week in, week out. And if the long-term ambition is to have 14 teams in the competition, you can only do that. That increases your fixtures by getting rid of loop fixtures, but potentially dilutes the quality of the game again, because you're spreading that pool of players across a wider number of clubs. So I actually think there was talk, a few years ago by a number of people about having, was it 3 groups of 10 or whatever, but actually having fewer clubs and a reasonable number of fixtures, but not too many. Actually, it increases the intensity of the competition, makes them. And as I'm repeating myself really, but the scarcity of fixture drives interest, in my opinion. I mean, if you're talking about, I know that the RFL wanted this, Rugby League Commercial wanted this, and it was the clubs that voted against it. In terms of the Challenge Cup being revamped, I'd like to think that will happen next year. I don't know whether it will or won't, but the clubs are the ones that. If that's going to go to a group competition, they're still in theory having loop fixtures, but under a different guise. So you definitely don't need the loop fixtures on the back of the Super League competition. So you will still see teams playing home and away in the Super League, probably at least then once in the Challenge Cup group competition. And then if you're in the playoffs, you play it again. So potentially 4 or even 5 if you meet in the Challenge Cup final or the grand final. So that's way too many again, but at least it's a slightly better revamp of a competition.
Yeah, we're only a few months away now from people saying, why aren't the playoff crowds as big as the regular season crowd? So look forward to that discussion coming up in September, October time. Hull versus Leeds then, Phil. You've brought us around to this point of the game of the weekend. Let's talk about Tony Smith. You didn't see him because you were there at the stadium, so you wouldn't have heard what he said, at least at the time. But as the 4020 Live Twitter feed mischievously said, you'll be hearing lots of articles saying he didn't have time, he didn't have the resource, and he didn't have the support of the club, one assumes, at Hull FC. And probably a fair assessment, as he says, it's a project, and he wasn't able to complete that project.
No, and I think the project hasn't changed. Clearly, some investment has come in, and that might hasten, is aided with the recruitment. No, I mean, the teams played a month ago. One team has improved from where they were, and one team is clearly standing still. So I think you had to read between the lines of what Tony said. That I didn't think he felt that there was a future for him there with the way that the club was going, and I don't think we can judge it until probably this time next year when John Cartwright's come in, when some of the signings that they've made have had the chance to make their impact. Some of the young kids that are clearly coming through, Logan Moyd and Eve Barmforth, very impressive. I've bedded in a little bit more. Whatever culture and identity is under Richie Myler, Gareth Ellis, that's been further established. I don't think one win tells us any more than what we already know. Hopefully Hull are a strong team because the sport needs them to be a strong team. And when we talk about areas where we think we can make an impact, then that part of the eastern side of Yorkshire has always been a very happy hunting ground for the sport in terms of either finding talent or when both teams are on, that rivalry between Hull and Hull KR. So yeah, I think there was much to admire about the spirit that Hull played with. That was clearly different to some of the games that they've played in the 11 weeks where they haven't been able to manage a win. And I think you have to look at the other side of the coin and say, did the opposition that they were playing make it relatively easier for them to get that confidence? And that is a word that we're going to come back to, I'm sure, because the game changed in effectively 9 minutes. 4 minutes before the break and 5 minutes after it, when Hull scored all of their points, and they gained from that. The crowd really got behind them, and applauded the effort that they were putting in, and the Rhinos clearly were incredibly deflated by that 9 minutes, much of which was self-inflicted. So I wouldn't read too much into where Hull are at the moment. I think it's important for them that they stop that losing run, and they play Warrington this week, who now are another team suffering with a crisis of confidence. We'll see an intriguing game in that respect as to whether Warrington can put a break on the season to stop them what happened last year at this time, and whether Hull. I think Simon Grip said it far better than I ever could, that it wasn't really about that result. It's about their next one now. Can they take it into that and build on a victory?
Did you subject yourself to watching this one, James? Because there's no blame if you didn't.
I saw bits of this game, to be fair. I think you're right that, to me, one team wanted it more than the other, and a bit similar to Warrington and Salford. I'm not saying Warrington didn't want it and Leeds didn't want it, but there was a greater level of desire and passion, in my view, that Hull had over Leeds, and similarly Salford had over Warrington. Warrington looked flat, and I thought Leeds looked flat. They made some poor mistakes, and I know the weather was very wet, but it was wet for both sides. And you've got to learn to handle that. But I still think, when you look at the league table, Leeds are 7th. They're 2 points off the top 6. So for all, Leeds is in crisis. The ebbs and flows from 1 week they get a win and it just dissipates, and then it rises up again. But they're 2 points off the top 6, so there is no crisis really. I just think from the outside looking in that they're an inconsistent side. And I think when you watch them, I'm not really quite sure what to make of how they play. What that structure looks like. Some of their key players are not performing as I think they should, and as their own abilities have proven elsewhere that they can perform. I think that's what's frustrating. I think the signs coming out from Leeds with the announcement of Ian Blease. He was asking for patience, wasn't he? I expect to see any change at Leeds this season at all. I think he talked about doing a review, didn't he? I would expect that as part of that review, you have to have a period of taking stock, asking lots of questions, reviewing everything, and then reporting back to the board. And that is going to take time. We've only got 12 weeks left of the season or something. You added it up. To do a decent review, I think, and then put together a recommendation, I would say it would take at least 4 to 6 weeks. So I don't expect to see any major changes at that club this season. Now, that's not to say it might not happen next year, because otherwise, what's the point in bringing somebody in? I think the fact they brought somebody in suggests something is not right at the club. Now, whether that's a person, whether that's a culture, that remains to be seen. And that's the whole point of bringing Ian Blease in.
Where does crisis become a crisis of confidence more than anything else? Because I'm looking at individuals within teams, particularly in that middle section of the table. Huddersfield, Catalan, Leeds, none of whom seem to be able to score at the moment. All of whom have got new halfback combinations this year, and I don't know whether that's part of the issue. But clearly have individual players who are not playing at the level of which we know they are capable of. But at what point does that become, and I'll use Leeds as an example because clearly I see them more than any other team. The first 10 or 15 minutes, even of the game on Saturday, they were the better team. They were making 80 to 90 metres each set of 6. They were creating some chances that they didn't capitalise on. Their last couple of plays are still almost as if they don't know what they're going to do. So if they don't know what they're going to do, how do the players know? how to position themselves properly. But it's the same with Catalan at the moment. It's the same with Huddersfield. How do you turn confidence around? And if you're a match official and you have a couple of games where you think, I haven't refereed that to the quality I would like to, and there's no obvious reason why I haven't, but I've just suddenly gone from being really ultra sure of what I'm going to give to I'm now not 100. I'm thinking about things maybe a bit too much. They're not instinctive anymore. How do you turn that around? Because I think with those three teams in particular, that's as much the issue as anything else.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I bang this drum all the time, don't I, about the top 6 inch, and I think that's what you're seeing with some of these teams that can soon ebb away. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't always have the answers because I struggled at times with confidence. But as a referee, you're getting criticism from everywhere. But I'm sure Leeds are feeling that themselves. As that's where if you're a fan, then support your club. Don't be there on the sideline berating them or berating individuals either on or off the field. Get behind them because that's ultimately what you pay your money to do. For me, I think it was often about going back to when I'd refereed a game that I'd refereed well, which there weren't many, people would say. No, but go back and try and just do the basics. Don't overcomplicate things because we have a tendency in professional sport to overcomplicate because we have full-time jobs. Just strip it all back. Go back to the basics in terms of refereeing. And are you there to referee the 10, referee the ruck, referee the foul play, and be consistent with both sides? And if you do that, you'll have a decent game. Ultimately, there's decision making in there that you can get some right and you'll get some wrong, but a lot of it is about the fundamentals, and that will be the same for the players, in my opinion. Strip it back and go back to basics. I mean, if it was Leeds, it's talking about some completion and completing your sets. So if you can get your completion rate up, get your defence working as it should, and complete your sets better, work a team around, get them to work away from their own goal line, then that's going to put you in a better position to win.
And as you said, play the conditions, because the one thing they didn't do for the entire 80 minutes was play any degree of wet weather football. I think the other thing that is interesting, again, we'll probably come back to, is it's very easy to pick out players and criticise them, and fans these days more than ever have a tendency to operate that scapegoat principle. But when you look at the stats of the Leeds players individually, there've been some decent performances at Hull. But you look at the overall, the team aren't performing. It's getting that balance between, I'll use an example. Mikolaj Aledski, who made a couple of errors in possession, which were a little bit costly, actually made more meters than any other forward on either side. That shows there's a willingness there. There's no lack of effort. There's no trying to get the coach sacked, all of that people throw into the equation at times like this. Individually, there are some very good performances. Collectively, there isn't. Is that the fault of the coach? Is that players trying too hard to rectify something that they feel is going wrong 15, 20 minutes into a game? And they're all questions that it's not easy to find an answer for.
No, we certainly won't have the answers when we come back after the mid-show break, which is now. But we will talk some more rugby league. It's amazing. We've done however long, and we've only talked about one game. So as proof as ever, there's always something going on in rugby league, even if we somehow manage to drag it out. So we're back for the second half of this week's program. We will be back live soon. I can't speak, which is a good place to start, isn't it? But we will be, honest. Hull FC 18, Leeds 10. Is there anything more to say about that one then, Phil? I mean, obviously, it wasn't a great game regardless. I don't know how to broach this, but I find it strange that we're supposed to be better people, but at the same time, we're also saying you're getting sacked in the morning. I don't know how we can go on with that statement. So it is what it is. I
also think there's been some wonderful tributes to Rob, and clearly Hull did a fantastic job in that respect. And it is amazing how fans can go from we're all in this together, there's a great unity, we need to stand tall behind each other and support and look after each other, and 20 minutes into a game we're arguing and trying to find obviously, as I said before, scapegoats for what's happening, and coaches need to be sacked and players need to be dismissed, and to me the two don't go together. It's going to be really, really interesting to see what the mood is at Headingley on Friday night when Lee are the visitors, and it's the first home game since Rob's passing. It's going to be I think a near sellout 20,000. So the evening's going to start in a wave of emotion, and then obviously some people will play rugby, and that mood may change.
I hope you've got your seat in the press box, Phil, because that's going to be sold out as well. I'll be watching on from home.
I'm intending to be there.
Good. I mean, it was a better weekend for the other league sides, but we'll come hopefully onto that in a bit. Let's work backwards to Friday. Warrington 14, Salford 25. So this is the Challenge Cup final hangover. 19-0 to Salford at halftime. Superb performance from Paul Rowley's men. Some people are already saying the next future ex-Leeds Rhinos coach. But I don't think you can take anything away from Salford on this. And it'd be easy to do so, but and blame Warrington playing at Wembley. But Salford were just on it from minute one.
Yeah, they played well. And what they're good at is they're good at playing not off cuff is the wrong phrase because there is a structure behind it, but they're good with ball in hand, and they're good to they are what's the word? They're an interesting side to watch. They don't play set plays that you've seen week in week out, and they can play off. They got to try off the back of a ball that was knocked down in an attempted tackle by Warrington, and they were able to play off the back of it. I think when a team can play off the back of that. That's what you want to see as a neutral, and they've made some really good breaks sort of on both edges. They played well, and they more than deserved the victory at Warrington. I think for Warrington, there is a hangover from the Challenge Cup, but I think what was probably more concerning was that they didn't really show up at the Challenge Cup final, and they didn't really show up again this week. So I think for them, this coming week is massive. Even if they don't get a win, I think their performance has to be massively improved, and they have to be in the game with the level of intent that was lacking really for the last two games. So I think if you're a Warrington fan, I think that will be a concern, that you want to see a response. And certainly, I can't remember what the score was, 19-0 was it halftime? I think he said, yeah, it was. I don't know whether he stripped the paint off the wall and gave them a bit of a shouting to. I'm not sure whether that's the right style on this game. Maybe not, but I think if they put another performance in like that, then there probably has to be some sort of response from the coach. But he's not going to press the panic button just yet. Clearly, they just got to a Challenge Cup final. They're having a good season, but I think from Warrington's point of view, it's all about this week really.
I think the great thing about Salford is they know who they are. And we talk a lot about identity, and they know the style that they're playing. They've had a couple of big defeats this year, particularly in the Challenge Cup. But they hit back the week after. They don't. We talk about confidence. What is it? How do you define it? They have got a collective belief in who they are and what they are. And even if it doesn't work every single week, it doesn't stop them in the way that they approach matches, the DNA that they've got. The players that they sign are there for a particular reason, and that is, if you see it, go for it. I think Chris Hankinson is a classic example of that at the moment. Almost a forgotten man in some respects. I'd forgotten that they'd signed him. And Ryan Briley, who's such an important part of their counter attack, is injured, and Hankinson comes in, and it looks as though nothing's been lost. Which I think again is a credit to knowing who you are and the way you play, and being able to deal with setbacks. It looks to me that Warrington haven't yet dealt with a setback, that they were having such a great start to the season. Their top line players were being given a license to do what they do best. The Sam Burgess effect was having an instant impact, and now they've been questioned because they came up against a very good Wigan side but didn't play themselves at Wembley. They lost all of the things that had made them successful in those opening rounds. They go out at home with the chance to say, right, that was a one-off. We've learned from that experience. And actually, they probably got slightly worse. And that might be because George Williams didn't play. But again, you can't become overly reliant on one player. And I look at Matt Duffy, which again, this is not individual criticism, because I am massively in awe of anybody that can play this game. But Matt Duffy in the early part of the season was being praised not so much for his running game, which we know is an integral part of what he can do, but Sam Burgess was saying, it's his try-saving tackles that I'm really lauding this year. That's what I like about him. That's what we've got into him about. And that's how I know that we're making progress. Well, yeah, I would say that at Wembley, particularly against Salford this week, and again, it's not to detract in any way from the manner in which Salford attack, is that Matt Duffy has gone back to the Matt Duffy that he was last year. And that's, like I say, it's not a reflection on him nor Sam Burgess's coaching, but at some point, it is confidence. It is going back to what you said. It's the basics of what was I doing well in those games, and going back to just concentrating on doing that. But Salford seemed to have that, and they're not deflected from it. And I thought they were excellent on a night where I struggled to find, other than Ryan Hall's record-breaking try, anything to get too excited about flicking between the three games.
I think just on Salford as well. I mean, they're fifth in the league table on 18 points, same as Warrington. They really should have beaten Wigan at home a number of weeks ago. And I think there was another game that I've got in my mind. I can't remember which game it was, which they probably could or should have won. With at least one or two extra wins there, they're in the third in the table, and even as they are now, they're fifth with a squad that has had changeover each of the last few years in key positions, and I think that's what shows that they have a strong. I don't know if the culture is the right word, but they have a strong set of values. I think that the players that they bring in must be well recruited, because they fit the same mode, and I think that's where people can be critical of Paul Rowley and how he goes about stuff, but I think can't deny he can get the results on the field.
Is that what Leeds are hoping to have taken from Salford then, from their new sporting director?
One thing he did say, and I think I'm contractually obliged to mention, there is a new 4020 out of which there is a 2-page feature on what is a director of rugby, which in Leeds' terms is the sporting director. It's about knowing who you are. It is an identity that runs through the entire club, and I think that Salford have that, and Ian Blease would have played a part in bringing that, and Paul Rowley's coaching is the embodiment of that. But the players you recruit have to fit who you want to be. And I think if he's had that success with Salford, then I think one of the reasons Leeds have gone for him is that they hope to replicate that.
No one's had any fights with tennis players this week, have they? See, we could have done with you last week, James. You could have had the inside scoop on whatever was going on at Keighley, because that was fun. I enjoyed that. But...
Yeah, I don't have the inside scoop on it. I must admit, I'm so busy at the moment. I'm not. Twitter is an impossible social media channel to. You've got to be on it like every few minutes to keep up. So I just don't really. So, but yeah, I've seen enough of it to know what's happening.
A wise man, as we know. Ryan Hall, then. I mean, what a signing for Leeds. You're signing the Super League's top try scorer, Phil, in the history of all of Super League. 2 tries later on, Hull KR 32, Huddersfield 6.
Yeah, I think take the Hull KR side first, because I think we do need to come back to Huddersfield in the same way that fingers are being pointed at Leeds. We've spoken every week so far this season about Huddersfield are also underperforming, and maybe what are the reasons behind that. But yeah, the highlight of the weekend in terms of celebration was Ryan Hall getting 2 tries in as many minutes at the end of that game, and being there with his kids and playing it all down as he would. I think the important thing, which has probably gone missing, is yes, he is now the leading scorer in Super League as it stands at the moment. Watch out for Josh Charnley, who is not going to go away and is not that far behind. But he's also now 21st in the all-time try-scoring list. And he only needs another 6 to get in the top 20. Now, if you end your career in the top 20 try scorers of all time, that is massive. And that shouldn't be forgotten or undervalued. It would also mean that he would knock somebody out of the top 20 who we know quite well, who also has an association with Leeds, Mr. G. Schofield, which he'd be very upset about, I suspect. But no, I think Ryan Hall is the epitome of the modern player. He keeps himself incredibly fit. He's immensely dedicated. He looks after himself superbly well, which is why people questioning him, finishing his career back at Leeds, even though he's 107, it's not an issue. If he didn't look after himself, he wouldn't be offered a deal. I'm really pleased for him, but I also think that he was incredibly generous in who he gave praise to. the people that had helped him, and not just players that he played with, but those that had worked behind the scenes with him. And he is a genuinely really nice guy who is a great character, who offers something to the sport outside of just being very, very good at what he does. And is another, we speak about it all the time. How do we sell the game to new people? Show more interviews with Ryan Hall. He's a fascinating character. Everybody knows about his Rubik Cube ability, his piano playing, his maths degree that he could have gone to university for. Let's make the most of people like him, because he is so good for the sport, and I'm really pleased for him. I thought the tributes that Sky got from people like Brian McLennan, Kevin Sinfield, clearly had obviously been waiting for that moment when they could press the button on those, were absolutely superb as well. And yeah, let's face it, but I'd rather look at the longer vision. If he gets another 6, I think, or 7, I think it is, to actually surpass Lord Schofield, then that again we should celebrate, because that would be massive.
I missed that in the King's birthday honours, but congratulations to the Lord of the Manor of Belle-Isle. I mean, in your touch judging days, James, how many times did you have to try and keep up with him?
Probably lots, and failed on every occasion. Probably, no doubt. But yeah, I mean, I'd echo everything that Phil says. He's a really nice guy, genuine bloke, and what a talent. And actually, when there were one or two people critical of Leeds signing him, given his age, I think actually he's probably the perfect player for Leeds. Given his association with the club, and what he can bring, not just in terms of his on-field abilities, but his personality and his experience in the dressing room with young and passing that on to younger players, and trying to sort of restore some of that sort of golden generation culture, if you like, into the club. Then he's probably actually the perfect kind of player that they need. And I think the role is he's going to have some sort of off-field role as well. So it's probably a just reward for him for his efforts with Leeds, and well done to him for the accolade at the weekend.
Tex Hoy is a prime example. I know this is very early to say this, of a player who obviously didn't work in one club, but he's working in another. And he was on the score sheet again for Castleford, who lost to Wigan 10-8 on Friday night. I don't think there's much we can say about that game, because it was one I was flicking between all the other games, but Wigan won after Wembley, and that was the main thing. They got the 2 points.
Just going back to Huddersfield, which merely to mention that I thought Ian Watson's post-match press conference was slightly bizarre. That he was saying that the scoreline didn't reflect the game, and I didn't see all of it, but I did major quite a lot on that game, because clearly it looked like the Warrington-Salford one was going to blow out. Plus, I like the commentary of Mark Wilson and Courtney Winfield-Hill, who I thought she was absolutely superb with her analysis. But the only points Huddersfield scored was a 90-metre interception try. So I'm not sure that the scoreline didn't reflect the game. But again, I look at a team that individually are not performing at the level at which those players would have you suspect that they should when they were signed. And you look at the team sheet and you think, yep, this will be the week that they turn it around. And I'm more convinced than ever that it's confidence. It's also having Adam Clune as a new halfback. It's going to take a while for halfbacks clearly to find their feet, not only in a new team, but on the other side of the world. But he doesn't seem to have settled players alongside him either, because Huddersfield themselves can't decide who is their best number 6, who is their best number 1. And we've mentioned this a lot, that your spine is crucial, and you almost have to pick your best players every week, irrespective of trying to fit players in who perhaps don't fit the way you want to play at the moment. So yeah, I was surprised with Ian Watson. To me, seems to be someone who perhaps again is, and he doesn't want people like us who have never played the game and have never achieved anything in the sport to tell him anything. And I get that, he's entitled to that opinion. But I do think as well there has to be a deal of honesty about what he's saying, and I'm not sure that was particularly right. But that's Huddersfield. As for Wigan and Castleford, I thought the only mistake Cass made was going for goal twice. It's 4-4. They kicked 2 penalties. That makes it 8-4. That's not a winning margin. It doesn't take you to 2 scores. I would have hindsight a wonderful thing. And again, I didn't see enough of the game to be qualified enough to say this, but when they got those kickable opportunities, I think that feeds Wigan's ability to dig a game out from nowhere. It doesn't put enough pressure on. They may not have scored if they attacked both of those, but I just think you've got to keep the pressure on. If you're gonna beat Wigan, go for their throat, because that's the only way you'll get them. And if you're going to take time out, you're going to kick penalties, you're going to still leave them an avenue to win the game because you're not pressurising them under scoreboard pressure. Then Wigan do what Wigan do. The scorer try to kick the goal, and suddenly you played really well, but you haven't won the game.
Wakefield Schools Cup runner-up 1993. That's an achievement. Honest. Confidence, halfbacks. Is that the same issue with Catalans then, who went without scoring a try against Lee? And again, all credit to Lee, but you look at that league table and there's all these things about Leeds are in crisis. It's the worst thing that's ever happened to Leeds, blah, 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 blah. They're 2 points below Catalans, who last year were in the grand final. And, conceivably, by the end of the weekend, it would take a big swing of points, but it could happen. Leeds could go above them in the table. So what has happened to the Catalan Dragons?
I have no idea because I haven't watched the game. I've not seen any of the games, so I'll be dead straight. I was just looking at their past results, actually. They only scored 2 points at the weekend, and then the 12 away at St Helens, 8 at home against Warrington. But they did score 26 against Leeds. No, I don't know. They seem to have gone off the ball a little bit, didn't they? I think we talked about this the other week, that they had that. Huddersfield had that good win at home, or whatever. Huddersfield away at Catalan in the Challenge Cup, and I don't know. I think they probably started the season off better than I probably would have expected them to have done, given that the number of players, or the key players that they've lost going into this year. So actually, it almost feels like a correction in form in a way, which sounds a bit of a strange comment to make. But I didn't anticipate Catalan would probably be in the top 2 or 3 this year, if I'm honest. As to the reason for that, frankly, it's anybody's guess really, because as I say, I've not watched the games, but clearly the halfback combination, which is different this year, can't be working all that well if they ain't scoring that many points.
And Luke Keary's coming, apparently.
Or not, if you believe his agents.
Oh, is he not?
Well, who knows? I think the other thing about the Dragons is they are getting into positions where you would think they would score points, and they're not. And I wonder whether that's again a leadership issue. That we talked about Sam Tompkins earlier. When he's on the field, he particularly behind the play and can see. Obviously has that third eye of where defenses are being marshalled and numbers on one side or the other. Absolutely brilliant at that. When you don't have that, when you don't have a Mitchell Pearce, and you've got a new halfback coming in who's trying to work out the players around him and the best way to play, you bring Jordan Abdul in very late. I think that is going to have an impact on how you play, how you convert your pressure into points. And I think there is something in common between Leeds, Huddersfield and Catalan at the moment as to why they are misfiring on attack. I think there might be other issues as well at Leeds and at Huddersfield, but that is what I think they've got in common. And the more they play together, the more it will become a more natural and instinctive partnership. But at the moment, none of them appear to be easily able to finish the lead-up work that some of them are putting in.
So that looks like a really mouth-watering fixture on Saturday, doesn't it? Catalan against Huddersfield. That sounds like a thriller.
No.
Let's hope it is. A points fest, maybe.
4 days of Rugby League on the telly. Thursday night rugby is back. Castleford versus Hull KR, repeat of the 1986 Challenge Cup final. Friday, Leeds Lee, which everyone will be watching, and Wigan versus London. Saturday, Hull versus Warrington, Catalans versus Huddersfield, and Sunday, Salford versus St Helens. Wheelchair Super League kicked off this week. Wins for the champions Wigan. They won 54-16 at Hull. It sounded like an absolute attacking bonanza between Halifax and Leeds. Leeds picking up the spoils 64-52. This weekend, I understand, because it says on the RFL website, Leeds host Hull on Saturday afternoon, and on Sunday afternoon it's London Roosters versus Wigan. So I might pop along to Leeds on Saturday afternoon. Is it in Leeds, Phil?
Yes, it's at the Edge.
Good, I know where that is.
I think the thing about those two games, which watching them mainly on social media and getting the reports in afterwards, great first half at Hull, 6-0 to Wigan. So all of their points came in the second half, and the Leeds Halifax game, 52-all going into the closing stage of that game, and Leeds winning with 2 late tries. So yeah, wheelchair in week 1 of Super League already delivering.
And the Catalans won the French title because I saw that was on the internet. I saw it. It was good. A close game as well. Leeds are top of the Women's Super League. They beat Huddersfield 42-4 away from home. Listen to this. It was on TalkSport 2. Imagine that. You've got the Euros on, you've got all this sport, and then you've got Craig Murdoch and Courtney Winfield Hill doing the women's rugby. It was a big win for Leeds on the scoreboard. Apparently Huddersfield played well. Featherstone 10, Warrington 16. So Featherstone still looking for their first win of the season, and Wigan winning 46-6 away at Barrow. York St Helens was postponed because of something to do with the pitch. I think it's been relayed at the LNER and it's being played in midweek at some point in the future. There's no fixtures this week in the paper, so I assume they're all off, and the 9s is coming up and something, I don't know. Round 11 of the Championship saw Halifax win away at Barrow 38-28 in a topsy-turvy encounter. York Knights, Mark Applegarth, Coach of the Year, 40-0 win at Dewsbury. There you go, you see. Give him resource and he does all right. He's like Tony Smith. Sheffield Eagles 18, Featherstone 16, so they get to keep Mark Aston in the Mark Aston derby, with Corey Aston kicking the winning points in that one. Batley winning 20 points to 16 away at Swinton. Toulouse beating Doncaster 52-0, which the way Doncaster have been playing is a great result for Toulouse. Bradford winning 36-18 away at Whitehaven, again another topsy-turvy game, and Wakefield stealing a victory at Widnes by 20 points to 18. I know we're talking about records earlier. There's a ridiculous thing happening at Wakefield, mainly because they played a couple of games early in the season where they scored loads of points. If Max Jowett had played against Newcastle when Mason Leno kicked loads of goals, he may already have this record already. He's already kicked 100 goals this year, Max Jowett. The record for goals in a season at Wakefield is 167, held by some fella called Neil Fox. Now, granted, in another time, in another place, but he's going to break that record if he stays fit. And that's a record that's been there for 50-odd years. This week in the Championship, Batley Toulouse on Saturday, and then it's a whole slate of Sunday games. Bradford Doncaster, Featherstone York, Sheffield Widnes, Swinton Barrow, Wakefield Halifax, and Whitehaven versus Dewsbury. So Wakefield now have a 6-point lead at the top of the table. No open top bus tour yet either. Very disappointing. And I saw a video of Matt Ellis singing in a working men's club or something. I don't know what that's all about.
Sheffield Widnes the game to go and see if you're stuck for something to do on Sunday and fancy some Championship action.
None of it on TV, as we know. And John Davidson put it in the chicken wing, I think it was last week, that the TV deal's dead in the water. So now, clubs, it's up to you again. League One, Cornwall 14, Rochdale 38, Hunslet 25, Midlands 18, Newcastle 6, Oldham 60, and North Wales 34, Workington 32. What a game that was for the new money-bagged North Wales Crusaders. I think we have to describe them as whether they are or not. Cornwall Keighley on Sunday. Hunslet versus Rochdale. Newcastle versus North Wales in Blaydon. So you can see the races at the same time. And Workington versus Oldham. That is League One on Sunday. Is that it? Have we managed to... There's still 10 minutes left on this recording. Have we managed? I was worried with 20 minutes ago. I thought we'd not have time to cover everything, but we seem to have done everything. That's worrying.
You thought we'd peak too early. A word of congratulations to Mark Dunning at Midlands Hurricanes. I think it's gone under the radar a little bit how improved they are this season. And every week they're running teams close, be they established, more traditional teams, or winning games against those that are more development led. But I do think that has gone under the radar a little bit, that he's galvanized that team. He's getting them playing in a style that is becoming harder and harder to beat. And I think he seems to be doing a great job down there.
Women's Origin squads have been in, haven't they? Because obviously there's the internationals coming up, the big pre-match entertainment for Featherstone versus Toulouse in a few weeks' time. Are they open to the public at Dewsbury, or are they behind closed doors? I don't think anyone knows, do they? I don't know. Oh, no, he's open to the public, apparently. I should have read that before I started talking, but never mind.
And there's an Academy International on the 2nd of July at Warrington, which was only announced when the squad was unveiled, which seems a strange way of announcing a game. But yeah, Warrington, 2nd of July, England Academy against the French Academy. I do think it's slightly concerning that the international break weekend is the week after this one. And as yet, we haven't had squads announced. We know it's going to be on Super League Plus. We haven't been told whether that's free to air, which I believe it is going to be, or there's a pay-per-view option. It's almost as if this is going to be the forgotten international weekend, and it's such a shame. I know that today Sean Wayne has said he's looking to maybe bring some of the younger Super League players in for the French game, and he will be targeting obviously getting a more settled senior squad for the 2 matches against Samoa. But it's almost as if it's going to happen in spite of rather than because of we've got an international break weekend.
Has anyone floated the idea that England should play Cumbria before the 2 tests against Samoa? Because if no one's done that yet, I'll just throw that out there because, just to be the first person to say it, because someone always usually does. Despite the fact that Cumbria is part of England. I don't know. Wales, Netherlands at the weekend as well in the World Cup qualifying series of qualifiers for the World Cup, which has been held.
Yeah, France, Serbia as well. I mean, it's likely that France will be the heavy favourites to win that. They will go through to the 2026 World Cup. The Netherlands-Wales one is interesting because Wales should win that, but we've seen some of their other games that Netherlands have some heritage players that they can call on. But if Wales win that, it'll be the first time their women's team have ever got to a World Cup, and that could be a landmark for Tom Brindle and his charges. And may the best team win, but it would be great for Welsh Rugby League if they were to make a Women's World Cup final.
The magazine is out. It's here. I'm showing it on screen. If you listen to the podcast, you can't see it, but you can physically hold one in your hands if you want to. Was it a difficult decision, Phil, not to have the whole cover as Rob Burrow? Because I would assume that a lot of people would have thought that would be the easy choice. It's the big story that's dominated everything.
What we decided to do was, one of the great things about Rob, which has been again carried on by his wonderful family, is that he was always about carrying on. You need to do what you move forward. Don't dwell in the past. And that's clearly why his parents and his sisters were at the groundbreaking ceremony the day after his passing, because he was insistent that life has to go on. So I think what we took the view that we needed to reflect it throughout the magazine. So it starts with a different chronicle for those that do get it. The first 2 pages of the magazine are normally a roundup of what's happening in the world of rugby league in every sphere. That was devoted to Rob, and then throughout the entire magazine, everybody got a chance to comment on it. All the columnists, anything that impacted upon his passing, be that the tributes at Wembley, his last TV appearance, people who knew a tribute. So we felt that he was going to be the thread throughout the magazine. There's a little touch which people may not have noticed, but every page is number 7, which again is in tribute to him. But we felt that because he would have wanted life to go on, that the teams that had won at Wembley needed to be represented on that cover as well. So it wasn't a tough decision, but obviously we wanted to pay as much due respect as we could, and hopefully the tone of that was right. But it was the hardest issue to write, edit, and put together.
So now, James, flippantly, where are you, or what game are you watching this week, rather?
Yeah, I shall be watching Leeds against Lee. That's the game I shall be reviewing. So I'm hoping for a decent game.
So you're obviously Phil's going to be there. You're watching it. I'm going to have to watch it to write about it for the magazine, but I can stop watching that at 8:00 because I don't really need to watch the game, and I'll watch Wigan and London, and then I'll forget, and I'll do something else. James, thank you very much. Phil, thank you. We'll be back next week to talk more rugby league. Please leave us a review on iTunes, especially if you leave a positive one. That's very nice. But if you don't, that's okay as well, because apparently it's all good for engagement. I mean, I don't
I'll have to make sure I put a review in this week then and send the third guest speaker.
Can we get rid of it?
Raise the whole level of the podcast. Where was it last week? And don't forget, if you've got a period house to sell, Mr. and Mr. Child.
Oh yeah, I need to put the plug in. I've not put a plug in a great place. I'm ruining your ending, Richard. If you have a unique home in Yorkshire and you want to sell it, thinking of selling or struggling to sell, contact me. We're on www.mrandmrchild.com.
Right. What do you mean ruining my endings? It's like these things are planned.
I thought you scripted it. You script all these things. It runs perfectly to time and schedule.
Indeed, it does. I should cut myself off halfway through a sentence, but I'm far more professional than that. See you next week, people.